Yes.
Governor, a very nice suit you're wearing today, but some may say you're a little overdressed to go to Capitol Hill.
Oh my gosh. So did you guys hear the U.S. Senate just eliminated its dress code because you got this guy from Pennsylvania who's got a lot of problems. I mean, let's just be honest, like how he got elected. Well, I mean, he got elected because they didn't want the alternative, but he wears like sweatshirts and hoodies and shorts, and that's his thing. So he would campaign in that, which is your prerogative, right? I mean, if that's what you want to do. But to show up in the United States Senate with that and not have the decency to put on proper attire, I think it's disrespectful to the body. And I think the fact that the Senate changed the rules to accommodate that, I think speaks very poorly to how they consider that. Look, we need this country, we need to be lifting up our standards in this country, not dumbing down our standards in this country. And this is an example why.
I'm going to add and enhance a bit. At the heart of crime are criminals. And we have to recognize this, that there is an acceptance on behalf of so many of the progressive left that crime has some other reason other than criminals. And so we have to start here, which is, first, we must arrest and prosecute criminals. That's what we have to do. And therefore, we must start with the law enforcement heroes who were demeaned and undermined to the point where no one wanted to do the job. Huge vacancies in law enforcement across the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we start there. First, we celebrate them and support them. Second, we raise their pay and we give them the resources they need. And third, we have to have prosecutors who will prosecute criminals who do crime. Second, starting in the Biden administration and running through all of the progressive liberals, they have opened our border to the point where it is flowing drugs into our United States. And every state has become a border state, and we're all dealing with gangs and drugs. And it's real. It breaks my heart. 5 Virginians die of fentanyl poisoning every day, every single day. And what's happened, of course, is that because there's no federal enforcement of drug crimes really today, we see the drugs flowing all over, and in particularly into Northern Virginia, where historically it hasn't been that bad. But because we have fewer law enforcement and prosecutors who don't prosecute, they come rushing in. And so we must stop the flow of drugs, and we must stop the gangs. And then finally, we must get our kids in school and not other places. You see, chronic absenteeism not only is a huge cause of learning loss, but it's what happens when they're not in school that is a huge problem. So we must support law enforcement and prosecute crime. We must stop the flow of drugs and human trafficking that is happening everywhere. And finally, we must provide positive moments for our children.
006, mandating that contracts with privately owned detention facilities not be renewed. The order is intended, quote, to decrease incarceration levels by reducing profit-based incentives to incarcerate by phasing out the federal government's reliance on privately operated criminal detention facilities. This order has created many unintended consequences, including the closing of the Willacy County Regional Detention Facility in Raymondville, Texas. The decision has had tremendous negative consequences with little to no obvious upside, forcing inmates to travel hundreds of miles round trip for court appearances, impacting the accessibility of legal counsel, and making family visits significantly more difficult. It has also caused administration issues for the prison system and harmed the local economy by eliminating these jobs. Literally every stakeholder that has a role to play in these cases is opposed to this Biden policy. That includes the defense bar, the federal public defender, the U.S. attorney, even the federal bench. All have publicly asked for this policy to be rescinded. Unfortunately, as with the open borders under Joe Biden, the Biden administration doesn't give a damn about how their woke policies actually affect South Texas or the lives of regular people. Ms. Peters, how has Executive Order 14006 impacted the Bureau of Prisons' ability to house inmates, and has it been a negative impact or a positive impact?
Thank you, Senator. So we were able to come into compliance with the executive order the end of last November and bring in those individuals from those facilities that were closed, and we were able to safely absorb them into our current population.
Okay, that you didn't answer my question. How has it impacted the BOP, and has it been positive or negative?
Senator, I don't know that I can put it in a positive or negative category. What I can
So
say
is the defense bar and the U.S. attorney and the federal bench, are they all wrong?
I'm not familiar with their opinions and their reasons for opposing.
Okay, unfortunately, you're illustrating that the Biden administration doesn't care about South Texas if you don't even know the impact it's having on all the stakeholders. All right, let's shift to the topic Senator Lee was just asking you about, because I have to say I found your answers to him thoroughly unacceptable. The 2022 Transgender Offender Manual, issued by the Bureau of Prison through your predecessors, reverted back to the Obama administration's initial designation and housing programming assignments. Notably, biological sex at birth is no longer the controlling determinant. Right now today, how many biological males are housed in female prisons under BOP?
Senator, I don't have those numbers in front of me today.
Why don't
but
you?
We could look at them and get back to you.
Why don't you?
I just don't have them top of
Did you know you were going to be asked that today?
No, Senator.
Oh, you didn't. Have you been asked that before?
On the record, Senator?
Yes.
I don't recall.
You were asked a year ago in writing, and you failed to answer it in writing. You knew damn well you're going to be asked it today, but you don't want to answer it. Senator Lee asked, why don't you report the numbers? You don't report the numbers because you don't want people to know the numbers. So the fact that you sit there and say, I don't know, he said 1,300. Is that number in the ballpark?
1,300 as it relates to which category, Senator?
Biological males housed in female prisons.
No, that would be a much larger number.
Which is a larger number?
So the number of individuals who even identify as transgender at the Federal Bureau of Prisons is around 1,700. And the number of individuals that are housed in institutions not conforming with their biological sex are very low.
Very low. Are we talking 100? Are we talking 10?
We will look at the numbers. We're talking less than 10.
So your testimony here, I just want to understand, your testimony here today is there are fewer than 10 biological males, human beings that were born male, who are housed in female prisons. Is that your testimony?
That is my understanding, and I will confirm that and get back to you.
Okay. Of the 1,700 prisoners you referenced, how many of them are convicted sex offenders?
I do not know the answer to that, Senator.
Are you aware that Great Britain's numbers, according to a January 2022 report, is the proportion of male-born transgender offenders who are sex offenders in the UK prison system is roughly 60%, significantly higher than the 18% of the general population? Are those numbers consistent with the American numbers?
I'm not familiar with Great Britain's numbers.
So let me ask you this. How many female inmates have been sexually assaulted by biological males who BOP has housed in female prisons?
Senator, I would have to look into that and get back to you.
Do you have an obligation to protect those female prisoners?
Absolutely.
And so have you examined how many women have been sexually assaulted by biological males that BOP has placed in the prison with those women?
I have not, Senator, but I will tell you that safety and security and the placement of every individual in our custody is top of mind and the most important.
So if it's top of mind, why haven't you examined how many have been sexually assaulted? This is an obvious question. If you put a man with male genitals, with a male body in a female prison who's a convicted sex offender, It's not rocket science that there's a real risk those women are going to be victims of sexual assault.